Namaste, everyone. I'm going to provide you a Kundalini yoga for the menstrual cycle. I would like to share with you my experience of hormonal imbalance due to sexual trauma, because I know I'm not the only woman, and there are many women out there in the world who have major hormonal imbalances due to sexual trauma. Right? My experience of healing my hormonal reaction to my upcoming menstrual cycle has been challenging, right? I react to my menstrual cycle very aggressively, very aggressively. And the negative mind attacks. I attack my menstrual cycle. So when my body senses, or when my negative mind senses that I'm about to experience the menstrual cycle, my negative mind, days before it actually happens, will go berserk. And the negative mind, it causes a lot of emotional upset. And that, for the emotional upset, causes, again, the wild emotions, causes major hormonal stress. And that hormonal stress causes major fatigue. So before I go into my menstrual cycle, I experience major hormonal fatigue because of the mental stress around the reproductive system, right? And again, this is due to sexual trauma, right? In my experience of the sexual trauma, I created a lot of negativity around sex, such as intercourse, and I created a lot of negativity just around this whole reproductive system because of the sexual trauma. So months after the sexual trauma, my menstrual cycle was very, I had such an aggression about it. I was a lot more aggressive than I am today, right? I'm getting a lot more aware of this reaction I have to my menstrual cycle that I didn't have before this sexual trauma. But my hormonal imbalances months after the sexual trauma was so burdensome, so tiresome, that I would literally collapse. I would just be so exhausted, where I'd just be so exhausted, just a week, right? It would be an entire week of, before I would have my menstrual cycle, literally my negative mind would be attacking my body, particularly this reproductive system. It would be attacking it. These just negative thoughts would just come at me from everywhere, right? A lot of it, and the negative thoughts, I've been tracing them, right? I've been tracing them in my own self-psychology, because I want to help you all to better relate to your sexual trauma as a woman. And I've been able to trace these negative thoughts through journaling and documenting, right, like a scientist. And I've discovered that all of these thoughts, these negative thoughts, are all traced to low self-worth, self-doubt, and feeling like I don't belong, or feelings of not being supported, right? Like abandonment, that kind of thing, right? When you don't feel like you belong, or you don't feel supported, it's kind of like you feel neglected or abandoned, that kind of thing. So all of these negative feelings would basically, they came from that sexual trauma, and the major reaction I had to it, right? So whenever that sexual energy is turning, right, it just triggers that low self-worth, the feelings of not belonging, right? Or not, like, I don't belong. I know that I'm not supported, and, I am neglected and abandoned. And major self-doubt. And the reason that I have such an intense, aggressive reaction to the menstrual cycle, basically the female reproductive system, the yoni flow, right, is because my sexual trauma, that sexual relationship, it brought such intense feelings of not basically being worthless. It brought such intense feelings of being worthless, such intense feelings of self-doubt, such as like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? That kind of negative reaction. And it brought such deep feelings of being neglected, being abandoned, and like, just like I didn't belong, like, kind of thrown to the side, like, you don't belong here, just get out, that kind of thing. And I've been carrying that negative reaction. Basically, it's that negative reaction. I've been carrying that throughout basically all my menstrual cycles up until that particular sexual trauma. And the turning, you talk about the turning, right? Even days before the actual the red the red moon comes, right? Days before that, I can just, the attack, it's like a war. It feels like an internal battle. And I never really had that. I never really had such a battle with my menstrual cycle before the sexual trauma. I never had such a battle. Like, it's more of a psychological battle. And I've traced, again, all of this psychological stress that I have associated to the blood, right? The blood moon. And it's all because of feelings of worthlessness, self-doubt, and feeling that I'm not supported, that I don't belong, right? Feelings of like being thrown away or tossed to the side. And a lot of these thought forms, such as being thrown away, such as like being worthless, like these thought forms I used to have, like, I'm worthless, I'm thrown away, like, I hate myself, like these kinds of thought forms I've never had before. Never had these thought forms before. Never crossed my mind. And they come up so vigorously around this time because it's revealing to me that I still am harboring I'm still harboring the impact of that sexual trauma, right? I'm still harboring the impact of that. I'm still harboring the impact of it. And it's like every time the menstrual cycle comes, it triggers it. It triggers, again, in every menstrual cycle, I feel a little bit more healed, a little bit more healed, a little bit more healed, right? Right? Because it's been about 2 years, so I feel a little bit more healed every time, but still I have to catch myself because there's always at least 2 or 3 days, right? Sometimes it used to be like 5, 6 days, but it's usually 3 days right before the actual blood moon that I would have major attack, like just major attack towards my physical body, right? Like major attack, major aggression. It would never be towards like, it's not like an inner anger or like a rage. It's more of a deep belittlement, right? It's a deep belittlement, right? Because some people, their sort of trauma can be like a lot of inner anger, a lot of rage, but mine is deep belittlement, and that has to do with me basically tearing myself down, right? So during these 3 days, like, I would be doing like Kundalini yoga, or I would be taking walks in nature, or just writing songs, or writing stories, and I would just have this attack. It almost would feel like a spiritual attack. And that spiritual attack would basically be telling me, like, you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be doing that, right? Because you're worthless, or you're, all of this. And I never had that before, right? So in my again, my experience of the sexual trauma, I do believe in transference. This is a concept I've been diving into for a while, kind of in my own self-psychology of sexual trauma and the sort of negative mind, and how sexual trauma really can create hormonal imbalances, especially around the blood moon. And I have discovered that sexual transference is a thing, because I know after the sexual trauma that was with my first partner, my first partner, I started to notice I had patterns that mirrored his low self-worth, like patterns that would mirror like the patterns that he had in his daily routine or his daily life, right? And the way he would basically react to life and the way that he would handle life. I took on a lot of those patterns, like they were transferred to me from him. And I never really noticed until I just started to feel like a spiritual attack that just never would go. And this was like maybe weeks, months after the actual experience, the sexual trauma. And I would just feel like, why do I always feel like attacked? Like, why do I always feel attacked by like an inner evil just destroyer inside of me? Like, why? I've never had this before. Why do I feel like I'm being attacked? And I realized it's because that what was transferred to me was a lot of this person's bad habits, right? I'm talking about bad habits in the mind, because I know now this person had a lot of bad habits in the mind, like a lot of belittlement, right? And that belittlement basically was transferred, exchanged to me, like mixing two waters together, right? When you mix two waters together and you drink it, you're not only going to be drinking the substance A, but also substance B, right? So again, sexual energy, like when I mixed, it's like mixing the waters together, and it's like substance A, substance B together, pouring it in and then drinking the glass. And it's right. So a lot of, this is all through 2 years of just self-psychology and completely trying to deconstruct this sexual trauma that really gets to me, like really attacks me when I'm on my menstrual cycle. And some menstrual cycles it's smooth sailing because I just sleep and I allow myself to sleep, and then sometimes it's really heavy and it's really stressful for me, especially the 3 days before. And again, you as a woman, you'll find like it could be when you're ovulating, because for me it used to be when I was ovulating, and then like always when I was ovulating it would trigger that kind of the belittlement basically, and I would belittle myself so harshly that it would be so aggressive and like flat out cruel to myself. And now it's 3 days before the menstrual cycle, right? And for you, like it's tracking your own sort of yoni energy, right? And for me, my yoni energy, there are times, thoughts that I have about like, I wish I had a hysterectomy, right? I didn't have the reproductive system, because I used to say it's a lot easier if I never had it. Then I don't have to deal with it, right? So my relationship with my yoni flow was like, I don't want to deal with you, right? Because every time the menstrual cycle would come, I would have to deal with it, and it would take time away from, you can say, the busy life. But then now I'm realizing like, no, this is actually I'm a woman, like this reproductive system is like calling to me. It's almost like a child that's crying and saying, mom, help me, mom, cry, like a baby crying, and the mother's just like on the phone, like, I don't have time, I'm busy, right? And what does the child get? The child feels neglected, and then the child, takes that on, and the child, kind of suppresses. So I've been suppressing, right? My womb, right? This yoni flow has been like a crying child, and I've been the mother that's been like, I'm busy, I don't have time for you. So a lot of these deep feelings, again, deep belittlement has been like suppressed. But it always comes up. It's always triggered because, again, it wants to be healed and released, right? And it will continue to come up, just like a child will continue to cry until it gets the nourishment it needs to feel balanced and to feel secure. So in the sexual transference, it was belittlement. I've kind of traced all of these negative thoughts that I've had to one, like the sort of center of it, like where it originated from. And all of these negative thoughts originated from belittlement. That was transferred to me, right? Was belittlement. Because when I review him as a person and him and his routine, his daily life, I realized like he had major belittlement, like major belittlement that was given to him from childhood, where he was belittled by his father, belittled by other people, caretakers in the family, and he had a lot of the belittlement towards himself, right? That created worthlessness, that created self-doubt, and created like I don't belong. So a lot of that belittlement was transferred to me, and then again I started to react in a similar way that he would react. Like I would start to take on the stress, the sort of stress that he had in his sort of his psycho, there's a word I'm trying to think of. I'll just say his mental body. So in healing that, I've been self-psychology journaling, right? Kind of gathering all these negative thoughts and finding where does it originate from. I found the word belittlement, right? And the belittlement really takes on feelings of being unworthy, self-doubt, and like I don't belong. And that is very aggressive. It attacks me very aggressively. So just by having that awareness, I'm able to, when it comes up, I'm able to relax, knowing that, okay, this is just something that's moving through me, and it wants to move through me, and not to react so harshly, right? Because when you begin to react very harshly, it just is going to cause fatigue, and it's just going to, it's going to drain your vitality. And a lot of my vitality has been drained due to, overindulging, right? And a part of the overindulging in my experience of trying to handle, cut out these negative feelings is I try to resist. They come up and I resist so much, resist. I don't want to feel it. So I kind of resist, like I try to push it away. And in realizing and doing that, I've been causing even more stress because it's happening. I'm trying to stop it from happening, but I can't stop my period from happening. So then there's double stress. There's stress of like, I don't want my period to come because then I'm going to have the emotions. But then there's also the stress of the belittlement is coming back, and then feeling the stress of that, right? So that would just completely drain my adrenal glands, right? Completely just wipe them out, and cause major just exhaustion in general, right? That's more than what really should be going on. So I'm going to give you a Kundalini yoga, right, for particularly the menstrual cycle. This is a very gentle flow. We're working with the yoni, right, the yoni energy. And this particular Kundalini yoga is beneficial for healing trauma, sexual trauma especially, right? This is something you can practice on the first day, the second day, the third day of your menstrual cycle. Right now, I am on my first day of my menstrual cycle, so I thought I would do it on the first day so I can kind of show you what an experience may look like for you, right? Because I'm not going to be too vigorous. I'm not going to be too like gun-ho and too intense. I'm going to be more like kind of tender, right? Because on your first day, as a woman, like you're really tender, like your breasts are swollen, your belly looks like you're pregnant. I've had people ask me if I was pregnant on my first day of my menstrual cycle, and I'm like, no, I'm not pregnant. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, yeah, I'm just bloated real bad today. And they would be like, oh, okay, right? But this is a good practice to have because with ourselves as women, because, we have to relate to men, especially if we have a boyfriend or a husband. And, men are not going to understand like sexual trauma. And I mean, they will have an idea, an understanding what that is, but they won't really know what that does to the female energy. They won't really know how that affects the hormones of a woman, right? So they're just going to think, oh, she's wants to be alone, or like she's really, sensitive, right? And some men don't really understand that, like she's really sensitive or she's really tender and I need to like give her space and not try to like, be too like jumpy on her or something like that. But this practice with ourselves as women can help us better relate to men, right? Because when we start to feel like, okay, like more in our yoni flow, like clearing out the blockages, like surrendering and allowing the feelings to kind of purge and allow it to move through us more fluidly rather than like stressfully. When we connect with our husband or our boyfriend, we can present more of like the more surrender part of letting go of sexual trauma rather than the stress or rather than the attack. Like, because some women, when it comes, they can attack their boyfriend or their husband, right? They can try to like, play out their emotional commotion with their partner, and all it does is just exhaust the relationship. Meaning, every day, every time the menstrual cycle comes, the boyfriend or the husband is like weary because he knows the woman is going to create some sort of conflict with him. And really the conflict we create with a man is really just showcasing the conflict we're having within ourselves as women, with our own hormonal imbalances, right? And that's not our fault, and that doesn't mean that so it's a bad thing. It just means that we need to have a practice with ourselves, and we need to have a deeper relationship with our hormones as women, so that we can have more an awareness of when we are hormonally imbalanced, so that we don't lash out of our husbands or our boyfriends because they don't have the sort of limbic brain to be able to like handle the woman, you can say the vast, complex hormones of a woman. Because we all know as women, our hormones, I wouldn't say more sophisticated than men, but I would say are a lot more complex than men, right? Our hormones are very subtle, but we know that, our hormones are a lot more complex because we have to have babies, and men don't. Like, they create, semen, but creating an actual physical being requires a lot more sophisticated hormones than just like creating semen, right? Because we have to actually create the whole thing, everything, the heart, the cell, the tissue wall, the brain, all of the eyes, the shape of the head, all of that. We have to create that. So that means we need a lot more sophisticated hormones than what is needed of a man, right? Because so men don't really, their limbic brain is not really calibrated to be able to understand the hormones of the woman, because they themselves don't have that. They don't have the sort of hormonal structure and design that women have. So they're more calibrated to just understand like the limbic structure of a man, right? In the man's emotion. And we know a man's emotion is deep, but a woman's emotion has a little bit more expansion to it, because we're a lot more mystic than men, right? Men are more concrete and we're more mystic, and that's why we're considered witches, or they put us in insane asylums for being emotional back in the old days, right? You could just put a woman in an insane asylum because she was crying during her period, right? And that was, easy to do. No challenge there for a man to do that to a woman. So in, again, the journey, right? The continue with the journey of the sexual trauma, and especially when it comes to like sex, right? For those of you who have sexual trauma and you're like, okay, like what is sex gonna be like? Is it gonna be like triggering, right? Because for myself, I asked that question. I'm like, okay, so if I'm triggered by my menstrual cycle, into these thoughts of belittlement and like I'm not worthy and self-doubt and like I don't belong and you know, thrown away, like, and that can create suicidal thoughts. Like when you feel thrown away, that makes you feel like, can make you feel really, really down, very depressed, like suicidal depressed for some women, right? Like, you know, how do you have sex after that, right? How do you like have sex without that, without the trigger and all of the upset that will come with it, right? For myself, I've been, again, self-psychology, work, diving into sexual healing, right? Sexual healing. And this sexual healing, it's, for me, it doesn't start with sex, like intercourse with a man, right? Because again, sexual healing, you have to get the healing moving before you're going to try to move the healing into intercourse, right? So a lot, even this Kundalini yoga, we're going to be working with sexual healing, right? With your orgasmic sort of, you know, force, right? The frequency of the orgasm. Because again, when you have sexual trauma, you can literally block your orgasm. You can even close your cervix. You can create so much tightness in the ovaries, and then you can create so much stiffness in the hips as a woman that when you actually are having intercourse, you know, it's not very pleasurable for you and it's not very sensual for him because your hips are closed, your cervix closed, the ovaries are tight, you're tight, and there's just no flow of energy, right? A man, no flow for him, no flow for you, and nobody's happy, right? And that can happen, right? For me, just the idea of sex, I used to be so tight, like I could just feel like my hips like tight and then my ovaries tight, right? And just the whole sort of pineal, the whole sort of entryway of the vagina would just like get very, very tight. So sexual healing is just you with yourself, like just closing your eyes in this practice will do, and just connecting with the reproductive system in the hips and like kind of feeling into that and feeling the loosening and the massage and the kind of opening it up. Because really sexual healing is kind of like you are massaging your hips, the liver, the back, you know, the lower spine, massaging the kidneys, even the ovaries, massaging the sort of entryway of the vagina, even opening up the cervix and really massaging the sort of the walls, the vagina, the womb, and just the walls of the cervix, because there could be tension, right? There could be even like lymphatic lymph nodes that are very like clumpy, because when you have sexual trauma, your lymph nodes can even get block, you know, really clumpy, like stagnant energy, because there's a lot of tightness that you're harboring, and that tightness will eventually become a lymph node blockage that again will be very painful if you have sex, right? So really the sexual healing before, you know, intercourse, really I've discovered it's more of like just you and yourself as a woman, just, you know, massaging and just kind of loosening and feeling safe in your own skin, like just feeling safe just to like move and like, you know, kind of open it up, right? Because then when you do have intercourse with a man, or if you know, with a woman, you know, whatever preference, you will have you'll have more an awareness to your sexual healing and to what you need, like what will help you to open up. And you can literally say to your partner, like either man or woman, like, I like it, what helps me to open up is like you massage my breasts, or like, you know, what helps me to open up is massaging my shoulders, or like I like to dance before I have sex because that really helps me to open up my hips, you know. And when you just get a relationship with yourself as a woman, and you start to like figure out what helps you to feel like in a very loose, healed place, right? Relaxed place, right? That really helps you to have this sort of orgasmic sort of frequency. Basically, it's creativity, where you really feel like open and available and creative and safe, right? That's the place we want you to be in as a woman. And when you really start to kind of gather that insight, that knowledge, and what helps you to get to that place in your own relationship with yourself, when you are with a man, right? When you're with a man, you can tell him like, you know, I've been through sexual trauma, you know, I've dealt with a lot of menstrual cycles that are a lot of hormonal imbalances. But in my recovery, this is what helps me to open up, like sexually and like loosen up. And a man will do that. If you say, like, I need to go dancing, he'll take you dancing, like, or I need to take a bath, like, together. That will help me to, like, get in the mood, right? Or to feel, like, safe, right? And he will do that, right? Or can you massage my breasts? Or, like, I just want to, like, just lay naked beside each other for a little bit before we, like, touch or something like that. He'll do that. Or she'll do that, whatever preference person, you know what I'm saying? And that's a lot more magical than, like, just not knowing the relationship with your sexual trauma and then going into sex and then just being triggered and then just being scared and then just being, like, tight, and then your partner is like, what's going on? And then that just creates even more, like, disconnect and upset, right? So, and I'm sure women who've done that, where, they've had sexual trauma, they've had sex too soon with a man, or too soon after the trauma, or maybe they even waited 10 years and they didn't really find their sexual healing in their relationship with themselves. They had sex with a man, or, their boyfriend or husband or whatever, and it just really brought up the trigger, right? So with sexual healing of even with your intercourse with your partner, it's going to bring it up, the trauma, the insecurity, the negative mind. But the more that you have this sort of practice of sexual healing, the more that you're going to know how to work through it, and you're going to have this sort of ability to surrender and let it come up and let it move out, rather than when you don't have an awareness or, like, a sort of relationship with your sexual trauma, you're suppressing it, you're ignoring it, it comes up, it attacks you, it'll attack your partner, and then it'll just create more tension, and then sex will just become very unpleasurable, because you'll be very, very tense, and the energy won't move, right? The energy won't be able to move, right? And I do believe men naturally do want to, like, swaddle, I'll just say, a woman. I think men naturally want to be told on, like, how they can better open up a woman, because again, sex is not, it's about a woman opening up at the end of the day, right? It's not about a man, him opening up, his whatever, because a man doesn't, he can get a hard on, whatever, but really the sensation of energy, the movement of energy, it's really dependent on the relaxation of the woman and the opening of the woman, right? When the woman's energy is high, right, that means she's really open. But when her energy is very low, it means she's very closed. And sex with a woman who's very closed is not going to be as pleasurable to a man than a woman who's very open and very high energy and very passionate. Because, at the end of the day, when men mature beyond the boys, ejaculation all over the place, that kind of thing, which, that's just the phase, I guess, right? When they start to mature, a lot of men do want to get more into the sort of romanticism and the sort of sensuality and the sort of sensitivity of it. Because, again, when, you ejaculate all day long and you get very numb doing that, it doesn't really work anymore, right? Just jacking off or just, mindless sex. It doesn't really work anymore. So a lot of men who mature, and not every man goes through mindless sex. I'm just saying, right, when men begin to mature, they start to want to have, like, the deeper kind of bonding, right? Like, to bond, because really you can't really experience, like, a sexual union or sacred union with someone that you're not bonded to and that you're not really, like, merging with. Because we want to merge, men want to merge with people or with their partner, their lover, right? And women, we want to surrender to merging with a man, right? And that really is about the bond you create, mind, body, and spirit. And it's overwhelming as it seems in our culture that rushes and is busy all the time. That is what is most rememberable in when we die, is the bond that we have with this particular person. Not even the actual sex, but the actual feelings of being bonded to a person that we really feel safe with, feel comfortable with, and really feel that we can let go and open up to. Because we don't open up to every person we have sex with. we like to say we open up our, our legs and open up our, our penis or whatever, get the hard on, but we don't really open up. We really don't, right? Out of, let's say you've had, 10 partners, you probably have opened up maybe to one or two. And how you know you've opened up to them is because you started to bond with them. You started to share, you started to care, you started to include them in on your journey of healing, of career, of creativity. And that's how you know you bond. You started to include them in your future, or care for them, or share with them your your openness, like your heart, right? And a lot of men and women can be challenging to do that. And that's how you know that's a bond, because that basically initiates two people into a sacred connection, is when they open up to each other. Now, a sacred connection is not, I give you sex, you give me sex, and we just, are drunk, just do having sex, drunk in love. That doesn't really create a sacred bond. Really, it's like, we're having sex because I really want to share this experience with you. There's joy. I want to have this joy. I want to connect with you, and have an experience of our friendship, and feel really close with you. Really, that's what it is. And that's like an openness, right? And it takes two people to be open. So it's not like, I want to be close with you, and then the man's like, well, I don't want to be close with you, right? That doesn't work. It's a two-way street. So if one person's closed off and one person's open, it won't work. There's just going to be conflict, right? Because the person that's open will trigger the person who's closed to open, and the person who's closed will resist and pull back. And then that just creates a push-pull. And who wants to have sex with someone who's just push-pull with you? That's exhausting, right? It's like, no, I don't want that, right? It takes two people who are open. And openness for a woman can, just getting your sexual healing through this practice we're going to do. And for a man, I feel men need more emotional healing, because a lot of men, they need emotional healing. Because I feel like a lot of men have a lot of like emotional anger, like inner anger, a lot of emotional guilt, feelings of not being enough of a man, right? Not being enough of a man. And I feel like a lot of men need emotional healing. And, this Kundalini yoga, you can, if you're a dude, you can do this and kind of visualize that you're having an emotional healing with yourself. Because again, when a man has emotional healing and he has sex with a woman can feel it. And a woman is deeply pleased sexually by a man who is emotionally healing, meaning, healing, opening up the emotions and letting some things out, and not harboring so much of the tension and the heaviness and the guilt, and I'm not enough of a man for you. Like, just let that, let that shit go, right? And that creates a very, very pleasurable experience for a woman, because not only does she's having him entering her, her body, because he is entering her, going into her house, the house of the woman, right? We're not going to the house of the man. The man is going into the house of the woman. That's always it. The man is the giver. How we know is because the man is going into the woman's vagina, right? He is the giver. And that is the universal flow. Men are the giver because they are going inside the woman's body. So they're literally giving the penis, delivering the penis inside the woman, right? And really when a woman is to surrender, right? And again, kind of let him sort of take care of the energy while she allows herself to open up and to be energetic with it. But when a man is emotionally healing and emotionally available, it's like the energy of the woman can really start to open up in ways where she can really feel connected to him. Like, she can share parts of herself that probably she doesn't share with many men. And women are so deep. Like, you think you know a woman because you had sex with her. You really don't, right? To know a woman is really, a man has to be emotionally healed and emotionally like open and available, right? Because a woman will not open up her deeper gem, right? Her deeper orgasm to a man who's emotionally blocked or emotionally unavailable or emotionally closed off. It's just how it is. So a man can, get ejaculate and have a woman all day long, but a lot of men I've discovered, and even just conversations, you could feel that it's just not really satisfying. It can, because when you get mature as a man, you start to realize, like, there is a sort of emotional healing. There's sort of a sexual healing to sex that really doesn't happen unless you actually are open, available, receptive, and in a bond with someone. Like, you really feel bonded with them, but beyond just sexual appeal, right? And that's what, a lot of men, the sex is wonderful for men, right? But to have this sex with a woman that actually has the sort of openness and the sort of like receptivity to him, beauty wise and in other ways wise, it's very, very pleasurable, right? So sexual healing for us as women is just being playful. So just think of it as, again, when women, have tightness in their vagina area, they're very serious. Have you seen these women? They look uptight, like they have a stick up there. They have a tree trunk up their ass. Have you seen these women? And you can just look at their body looking all stiff, and you can see, oh God, they don't get no good sex. Like, you can just see it. You're like, they're just like real stiff in the tight, the hips, and you just look at them, they have a stick up their ass, right? You can kind of see it, right? That they're not really playful. And I think what's most wonderful, two men, in my perspective, right? Because I'm not a dude, but I do talk to dudes. And I think the most pleasurable thing is a woman who's playful, right? Playful. And a woman who's playful is confident. That's the thing. It's confident, meaning like, a lot of men, they have their ego. So their ego sometimes needs to be in check. And sometimes the only way to check a man's ego is in the bedroom, right? And a lot of men who do have, the top dog ego type of thing, men love their ego, right? Kind of how you slay the ego of a man is in the bed, because that's when they're most, kind of sensitive, we'll say. A man is sensitive, sweet, right, kind of thing. He's sensitive when he's in the bed, naked, kind of thing. And as a woman, when you're playful and confident, you can slay a man's ego and he'll never forget it. Because you'll be like, damn, that woman just took down my ego, right? But we can't do that as women if we're not sexually healed. If we're walking around like that, like we're, having sex with a man and we're just like tight, and he can feel that in his ego is like, I'm not satisfied by that, right? Because a man really wants the wild child, and not just like crazy woman, I'm talking about playful and being herself, and, kind of opening up and, letting, the flower bloom kind of thing, right? The flower doesn't bloom like this, right? But that's what will happen if we don't, women, work on our sexual healing and just keep it suppressed. We're always just going to have sex like this. I don't know, like, or just kind of like going into it, but not really fully opening up, not fully blooming, because we'll always be holding back because we don't want to get hurt. So we'll always be holding back a little piece of ourselves because we don't want to get hurt. And men who have like emotional damage, emotional, like, I'm not a good enough man, that type of thing, they'll always be holding back. So as long as a man's holding back, a woman's holding back, the sex is going to be like this, right? But when a man emotionally heals and a woman sexually heals, it's like this, that kind of thing, right? So that's what we're going to try to work on with this particular Kundalini yoga for you women, but you can do this as well, men, and just visualize, I'm emotionally healing myself so that I can be more of who I am, as a man and as a woman, which is, woman is playful and ecstatic and exotic, and a man is very stable, very dependable, and very secure. Like, he's the tree and she climbs up the tree, right? Like, he's the tree and she's just like, oh, climbing the tree and just like jumping on the tree, and the tree is just like, yeah, I like this. Like, she's just like climbing the tree and just like, oh, the tree, like, swinging on the bows and just taking, doing her thing. And he's just a tree and he's just like, yeah, my ego's feeling real good right now, right? That's I think that's what men think, right?